for the sake of time, why don't we just jump right into it again? Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you guys spending time with us. This is the March 9th, 2022 Business Advisory Committee meeting. On the phone here, we have Stuart Ackerman, members Stuart Ackerman, Dave Pellner, Dwayne Spiegel, Tony Barranco, Will Roach, and Kurt Rahman. And we anticipate maybe a few other people will join us as we go. Just in terms of the format today, I think, Jim, you're pretty comfortable with questions as you go. But just for the sake of any general questions that don't get asked, this will be divided up into three parts. We'll do a project overview, a 2021. Let me just throw up the 2021 recap, and then a 2022 construction overview. We'll stop after the project update as well, and if anybody has any questions before we move on to the construction segment. Just letting you know, too, Yep.
Hey, just real quick, I just maybe kind of want to jump in as well. I think obviously there's a lot of moving parts here and a lot of interest, important commentary and updates. But I also would like to get any thoughts everybody has as it relates to, again, a big part of our purpose is not only in terms of helping to shape the clay, if you will, and I think we did a great job with that on the front end, but I think the other part is around communication and communication to the business communities. So I think it would be appropriate to maybe have a conversation at the end. I'd like to add one more topic just in terms of, are we doing enough? Do we as a committee think we're doing enough, or are there ways we can continue to add broader communications as well? So sorry to interrupt, James, but I just wanted to kind of share that.
Appreciate that, Will. I just had one final note just to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded. So with that, in the absence of Dan at the moment, we'll move on to any chair updates. I think this is a very good update. We'll add that to the end of the meeting. We'll just have some more general questions. I know that we also, are very keen to hear about how you're hearing the project discussed in your circles, and if there's anything you guys think we can do to respond, more effectively to some of the comments and feedback that you're getting. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Will, and then Will, when you're done, please forward it to Jim, and I will put on the AC slide, and then when we're ready, I'll start the slideshow.
Yeah, thanks, James. I think my only just more of a fast update here is I've got to jump off for about 15 minutes and half hour, 45 minutes. But I'll be back on. And Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you. That's all we got. Let's roll.
All right. Thanks, Will. So I kind of wanted to start out. We've been in the news, unfortunately, quite a bit recently. And imagine you guys might have some questions about where we're at and what we're doing. Our chair, Charlie Zelle, has made a couple of presentations to the Senate and the House. Various committees talking about the project. Of course, we are looking at increasing our budget due to our time issues. And I can't remember, did we meet last August? I think it was the last time we got together. So, and we talked about
right. Yeah.
We talked about some technical issues. My team has been spending the past year negotiating a new schedule with our civil contractor. We had some rather serious issues that we had to get past, and we've talked about the corridor protection up in the Minneapolis area. The tunnel, of course, is the prime culprit, but also the Eden Prairie Town Center. But there's also, the contractor has claimed productivity issues and of the past, and just the cumulative change orders that we've had on this project. And I just want to note that these type of projects are really complex, and given that we have essentially two fundamentally different contractors with the civil contractor and then the follow-on systems contractor, there's a lot of coordination goes on with that. And give you some perspective on Central Corridor, we had over 1,700 change orders among 4 contracts, and that amounted to about $25 million. We on this project, civil alone, we're going to be upward in the 800 by the time we get through this year, probably a little bit more. But the amount we can take maybe 6 of those that amounted to closer to $200 million just because of the significance of what's been going on. The contract originally for the civil contract started at $800 million. We're a little over $1 billion right now, and we have been working with the contractor to come up with a settlement, because there's either an option that I could just say, okay, I want to do a unilateral change order to direct you to do the work because there was unforeseen conditions and change conditions that the contractor is subject to, and that's not going to go very well. That could we wouldn't have a handle on our schedule. We wouldn't know where we're going. The other route is we could just say, well, we're going to go to litigation and fight it out later while they get the work done. That's not a route we wanted to go either. So we decided to get a team involved that was really involved in the St. Croix project to help us navigate to get to a settlement agreement with the civil contractor, and we're very close to getting that done. But it's been a kind of a long, arduous process, but it's going to cost money and cost time. So I'll talk about that as we get into the slides. So if you could advance maybe a couple of slides there, James.
Yep. Right. For some reason, it's not going. Here we go.
Kind of stuck there. Okay, so we've seen this before. We are starting to talk about, this is something that Chair Zille had presented. We are looking around a 35-minute forecast from Eden Prairie Southwest Station into Minneapolis, and that's probably something new for you folks. But this is similar information we've had in the past with all the pieces we're building. I just did a tour with an individual yesterday, and things are looking really well on the west side of the project. Where we're not looking so well is Minneapolis, where the tunnel is, and that's where our focus is going to be. So go ahead and advance the slide. So there's also been a lot of discussion about maybe back up there, James. There's also been a lot of discussion about our technical capacity, and there's an audit going to be looming. The legislative auditor is going to be I think that's going to be passed as a bill here soon. Just want to know that we have about 25 different engineering firms working on the technical issues on this project. And that in addition to having MnDOT, Hennepin County, Trauner and Venable, those are the last individuals that are really helping us navigate the settlement agreement with the civil contractor. But I'm not doing this alone. So I think you guys know that, but we have a lot of support to help us navigate this complex project. Next slide there. So I think the next slides are, well, this kind of shows you where we're at right now. We're about 62% complete on the civil construction. Again, a lot of work completed out west. It's really the tunnel that in the Kenilworth corridor that's really our challenge. And systems contractor Aldrich Parsons has been started their work and getting that underway. And of course, we got the testing and all that good stuff to do as we finish out the project. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I'm trying here.
So the challenge, you may recall that this is the first of them. We'll start from east going to west. This is the corridor protection. We had to add a significant change order to the tune of about $90 million for 2 change orders to add this corridor protection. And this was added. We all knew going into this that as we're going through the civil procurement that we had this looming, but it had to go through environmental clearance. This is a historic railroad. Given that we're a federal project, we have to be mindful of a lot of processes we have to go through. So this had to go through an historic review, among other things. And so that environmental review was concluded, but we had always intended to add this in change order. Unfortunately, it was more costly than we had anticipated. And the contractor has claimed that this is causing additional time. I can say that this work is going very well. Quite a bit of the wall is up already. There's over 400 drilled shafts that are already in place, and that's moving along. The next item is the next slide there, James, is the Kenilworth Tunnel. And of course, this is where we're really challenged. We've had to add a secant wall as part of the supportive excavation along about 500 feet of the over 2,000 foot length tunnel. And of course, you've been hearing about the issues. this is the secant pile off to the right. Just kind of, you can't really tell that building. That's our real challenge right now. The Sika building, there was reported some cracking up on the upper floors, and we are in the process of investigating that. We found out about it on a Thursday night, and we got a forensic engineer up there by noon the next day to start taking a look at that. And then analysis is underway to really determine what was the cause of that. We're only drilling so far and filling the, these secants go down about 64, 65 feet, and that gets filled up with concrete, and every other one has an H pile going into it. We haven't really started excavation here, so we're not quite clear what's really caused that. You can see off to the left the Sika towers, and so that's really our big challenge right now. We put the secant work on hold until we can get a full assessment of understanding what caused that, and if any remedial action needs to be taken, we can proceed with that. This is the third piece that the contractor has cited as an issue that caused them to delay their work, and this is the town center station. This was deferred originally, and when funding through CMAQ came through, it was decided by essentially the Corps of Management. The Met Council bought into it, said we'll add this into the project, but this is another element the contractor cited causing delay. This, as you can see the image here, that's pretty well completed now as far as the civil. So yeah, sorry, James. So you can maybe hold here a second. So on the civil construction with London McCrossan, we tried to maybe use these slides to depict what we're doing here. We essentially have the original civil construction schedule. It was slated to get done around the end of October of this year. We have add a little over 34 months to the time to get that done. And really the long lead item is that tunnel and the secants. And so that brings us up to around September of 2025 to get completed with the civil construction. And of course, there's going to be costs with that because the contractor, if they're going to be building something within 2 years and now it extends another 2 years, they're going to need more money to pay their people and pay for their overhead to get those additional time there. So what's the outcome of this is we'll have a revised civil construction schedule, which we have essentially negotiated, and I think we're there with that. And there'll be costs. We have sought and received approval from our council to spend up to $210 million for this settlement. We hope it isn't that high, but that's going to go through an assessment. And one of the things we're going to do is we'll come up with a value of what that's going to be. The contract will have a value as well. And what we can agree on, that'll go through a mediation process. So we want to make sure that we get something, something very valued here as at the end of the day here. But that's not the stop there. We need to do the same thing with our systems contractor because they were expecting to start taking over sites already, and that's been delayed because of the civil. So we are working with the systems contractor to develop a new schedule. That's still in work, but we think that we have enough under our belt to understand where we're going to be at the final end of this project here. But then coupled with that, we have those 25 consultants I mentioned and other experts. We have to negotiate contracts with them to extend their time because we'll need them on board. We can't move forward without having their assistance as well. So it eventually gets us to a revised project opening day and cost. And the next slide, you've heard us announce that we're looking at another $450 to $550 million more to this project. Seems like a lot, but there is a lot to pack into this with all the various contracts that we have and the additional time that we have. And we're currently projecting an opening day of 2027. We're hoping that we can rein that in. One of the things that we are embarking on is once we saw that we were having schedule issues, we're looking at different ways of how we can approach the testing in particular. We have to test this whole 14.5 miles. We're looking at the idea of trying to get ahead of the game and actually bring trains out to the west end and get that tested once the systems work is in place. And then likewise on the east end, we would do that. And then eventually when the Kenilworth Tunnel is completed, we can complete that testing. So that planning is underway with our operations folks to work that out. A lot of details still yet to be worked through, but we think that might be a good solution to help mitigate that REMU service date. Maybe I'll pause there if there are any questions. It's kind of a lot to throw at you all this morning here.
Hey, Jim, this is Dwayne. I was kind of curious as I drive around. I live in Eden Prairie and I go past Hopkins, et cetera, and I see all these stations look like they're done. And they're going to be sitting there for what, 6 years now or 5 years potentially, depending on your schedule. Well, is there going to need to be any budget allocated for vandalism? Because I could see them being ripe for graffiti and broken windows. I don't know what all could happen, but they're going to be sitting there. You're going to have rusting things out possibly and things like that. So I'm just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, we are curious about that as well. That's a big concern, particularly the glass out there that could be broken. We actually evaluated whether we should hold off on installing all that, but it just gets too complex. So what we're looking to do, one thing we did on Central is we fenced we fenced around the stations after the systems contractor is done. So keep in mind that once the civil construction is done, then the systems contractor kind of takes over the site. So they own the liability of that site until they get their work done. But eventually it'll be handed off to Metro Transit, where we're going to have security on that. So it is something we're looking at. It's something front and center that I'm particularly concerned about how we navigate with that.
Thank you.
Jim, further to Dwayne's really interesting question, how does that work for warranties and guarantees? I mean, do they start now when that work's done? Do we lose these numbers of years of warranty that go with it, or do they not start until 2027 in this example?
Yeah, unfortunately, Stu, the warranties will start. In fact, we already have utilities that are in place that are really being used by municipalities that the warranties are starting to kick in because it's in use. So that's another issue we have to navigate. If there are certain elements, particularly on the systems, that we need to look at extending that warranty, and that's something we're talking with our systems contractor about doing on certain elements, and with our operations, that might be something we're looking at. But we've forecasted some contingency to deal with that. We haven't really kind of fully fleshed out what we would do in extended warranty and what we wouldn't, but we have an idea about traction power substations, for example. As long as we keep those running, those are usually pretty dependable items. But there are other elements such as signals, we may want to be looking at that issue. Yes, Dan.
Good morning, Jim. Good morning, everybody. Sorry I was a little late. I had some computer problems on my other computer. Say, Jim, the question I have is, while you're testing the cars on the west end out here before the east end is done, if there's some issues with the cars, maintenance issues, or they break down or something like that, are you guys going to be able to service them without being able to take them all the way back to the service facility? Or how would you handle that if there's some issues?
Yeah, that's one of the issues we're trying to get our arms around, because if someone does break down, what do you do with it? Because it's essentially we wouldn't be able to get it back through because the tunnel is not done, and we're looking at trucking these out, and so that's going to be a cumbersome process. So it may need that we bring extra vehicles out there for contingency. Some light maintenance can be done, but it's going to be a challenge because we're not necessarily equipped to work on these vehicles. So it's another hurdle when we're trying to work through. All right. We put up this comparison. I always want to be careful getting accused of making excuses, but I'm really just trying to report what we're doing here and where we're at. Even when we added this money to this project, we feel within well below a lot of the peer projects. Now, you could go see some peer projects and say, well, it was much less than this. For example, Central Corridor was about a little under 100 million per mile, but it all depends on what you're building. Maybe the next slide here, James. So, for example, this Pittsburgh North Shore, that was a significant tunnel work that had to be done, through a complex environment. So very expensive. We have a lot of structure on the project we talked about, but we still feel like for the value for the money, the value for the project, we're still well under a lot of the pure projects we have out there. But of course, there's going to be examples where, like I said, that there are going to be much fewer dollars per mile, but it really depends on the complexity of what that project is about. The other thing is we really want to point out, which I think all you are aware, that there's been a lot of development. There's still more planned, and these are projects that either have been built or on the, just about to be under construction here. And so we just see that this is continuing. I just saw where Blue Stem North down in Golden Triangle is slated to start doing some work on just west of the Golden Triangle station. So a lot of things are happening. We're very pleased that the development community has what they've done so far, and it doesn't seem like it's slowed down. The other thing that was always on our mind is the DBE participation. We tried to have a really robust DBE program, and here's kind of the numbers as of the end of the year where we're sitting. So we're sitting well above our overall goals that we had slated for these various contracts. Now these won't all add up because there's other construction contracts involved, but that gives you an idea where we're at. We're also getting paychecks to just a lot of Minnesota here. 75% of the counties, someone is bringing a paycheck home. So I think that's very important for the state. And just more stats about the workers. We're putting a lot of people to work here. It's a big project, and we have a lot of folks involved. Maybe I'll pause there real quick. I'm trying to ramble through this pretty quickly, so catch the highlights before some of you have to depart here. So sorry about going so quickly here. Any questions up to now? All right. So just construction recap. You may have seen this in other venues. This is essentially where we were at the end of the year. To kind of give you a perspective, we're about 35% at the end of 2020, and we have a lot underway, completed. Utilities on this project, that's one thing that's always a culprit. That's gone really well on this project. We've had some outliers that have been challenges, but for the most part, that's been going pretty well. And our Franklin facility is about complete, where we expanded that to house the additional 27 vehicles, which we have 26 here in Minneapolis. Those are going through commissioning right now. There's a number of hours the train car needs to run before we put it in revenue service. We're also putting additional security on those vehicles to meet commitments we made with the community a couple of years ago. And we are going to be putting these out in revenue service on the blue and green line well before the green line extension gets done, but they'll be put to good use.
Jim, one question
Yes.
I know, just for everyone's perspective, I asked at the last quarter management committee is, well, can we start getting revenue on the west end? And with that last slide and the last talking point, do you want to maybe share a little bit about maybe why we cannot?
Yeah, thanks, Will. So we that really isn't a possibility, given Dan pointed out the maintenance issue. It's also, we just don't have that link to our central line, so it just doesn't lend itself. And that's where we're going to have a challenge, because people are going to say, well, geez, you're all done here, what's going on? And I'll see trains at some point running up and down for testing, and that's something we're going to have to manage from a communication perspective to make sure people understand we're not in revenue yet. But it's really just not possible to have kind of a separate revenue service operation of our system, just from a maintenance and just operation perspective. Here we have 11 of the stations underway, mostly in the west, that are nearing completion. Golden Triangle and downtown Hopkins here are showing. So the stations are pretty well underway. And I wanted to give an opportunity to see this video here, James. If you could this just kind of gives you some perspective of why this tunnel is such a bear for us. So maybe, James, you could tee this up. And it's about a 3-minute video, so it's not too long, but
James, you might need to switch your screen to the video and then reshare with audio.
Well, maybe we might have technical difficulties on this.
Jim, we can make sure the committee has the
Yeah,
link to the video to watch it.
Let's do that. So this just kind of walks through the various stages of this tunnel effort, and you know, I'll still be put out if you want to do tours. Maybe when it's a little warmer, we could get you out to take a look at this. It's still a little bit of a challenge. I mean, I think the key thing here is that we have limited access to get into to work on this tunnel, and that's where it's been quite a challenge for the contractor to get this done. So why don't we go ahead and just move on, and maybe at your all leisure, you can take a look at the video here at another time. So
Jim, just real quick, could what as we look through the video, what are the key components that we need to be just observing or be aware of?
Well, I think it's just the different phases of we essentially are building this tunnel by cells, and there's 30 of them. They're generally 100 foot in length. Some of them are a little bit longer, some shorter as you get to the portals. And we're in the groundwater. So we're, you know, the excavation, you know, the sheets go down about 64, 65 feet at their maximum. And we are excavating down about 40 feet into the ground. And 20 feet of that is in water. So essentially it's a series of first excavating down, and then you need to put a tremie concrete pour, which is about 8 feet thick in some cases, maybe a little thicker, a little less in other areas. That is placed underwater. And anytime the contractor is excavating underwater, we have to have a diver out there to inspect the sheets, because we've got separation of the sheets, and that's caused some challenges. And so it's just the process of going through the tunnel construction. It's kind of this very slow locomotive that has all these pieces that are moving along, and you can't just plop in and do one segment at a time. It's really kind of a process that they have to undertake to build the tunnel. You know, we have a number of slides here that I was really intending just to kind of leave these behind with you. There's a lot of detail. We are showing these to cities. We have town halls that are coming up, and we've also been visiting with city councils. I was at City Hopkins last week. We'll be doing Eden Prairie next week. We'll be doing St. Louis Park and Eden Prairie later on. But these are intended, I wasn't really necessarily going to go through the detail on these, but these are intended to show what's upcoming for 2022, primarily where we have impacts to traffic, and if there's any pile driving, just to keep everybody aware of what is upcoming in terms of impacts that they may see. So I think maybe for these, maybe you can look at these at your leisure. If you do have questions specifically, just you know, you can reach out to James, and we can get your questions answered. But kind of wanted to zoom up to the outreach pieces, unless you have any other questions for me before I hand it off to James. All right, James, why don't you go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Yeah, we've got a busy schedule for outreach this year. We've continued to plan and coordinate, of course, with local businesses, stakeholders along the corridor as construction continues. Last year, I don't know if some of you know, we conducted 3 rounds of public walking tours that seem to be very popular, 3 in each city. And we'll continue to have another round of those this year. I don't know how many we'll have at this point, but they're very popular, and I think we're looking forward to those. Again, they're a lot of fun. We get a lot of people out there. A lot of people are very interested in the project, and you can hear that in their comments. In addition, we'll continue to do pop-up events. We'll continue to have public meetings. You know, we continue to get invites now that the mask mandate is lifted. I know I had recently as an example, an invite for Arbor Day again back at Eden Prairie. So they're starting to open up again. And so we'll probably see more of those in-person meetings evolve this year again, similar to what we had a couple of years ago. And then we'll continue to the weekly, bi-weekly construction updates. As Jim mentioned, we've got a full menu of presentations in March this year. We did the Hopkins meeting first. We've got a council presentation in the other cities as well, and extending into April. And then we also have some virtual town halls starting actually tonight. The first one is at Minnetonka, then Eden Prairie, and the rest of the cities as we go on. And those are basically to give people and the residents an opportunity to check in, ask any questions that they have. They don't have to necessarily be from that municipality. And these links to these meetings are online in our public involvement tab. Other than that, we have we're also working with Robert Street, and we're developing a number of different kinds of videos that we can present, shorter videos that are positive, proactive, discussing various elements and kind of giving people more of a general education of construction along the corridor, as well as other topics. And we're in the process of developing those topics. And then we're working, as I said, with Robert Street. We meet with them regularly and our communication colleagues there to come up with additional ways to communicate out information about the project. All right. Without further ado, if we have any other questions, we'll move on to the final round of questions and answers. Does anybody? Will, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks, Jim, for the great updates. What questions do you have?
Any more questions?
Maybe I'll ask a collective question to the group. What are you hearing from your constituents within your communities? Concerns, attitudes? Any excited to see the progress with construction, etc. What are we hearing?
Hey, Will, Dave Hellinger. I'm not hearing anything. I mean, it's been pretty well publicized, right? There's been a lot of information on the complexities and situation, the status, and the press. So I don't think there's a kind of a lack of information out there. And obviously, some disappointment as it relates to just the timing of all of this, and a lot of anticipation to try to get this up and running. And now with the latest delay, it's quite unfortunate. But that's about all that I can really offer.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, I would say in Minneapolis, where I live and work in the area I'm representing, I would echo it. Dave, it's been well publicized. I think there's some lack of confidence that I'm hearing, with the budget being so much greater than anticipated, with the delays, with the potential cracking in the grain towers, continued serious concern about how this might impact the lakes with that tunnel going underneath the lagoon. So I think that it's been heightened through this process. But beyond that, as was noted by Jim, there's still a tremendous amount of development that is in progress as a result of the anticipation of this. But I do think there's a confidence factor that's been disturbed.
Yeah, thank you for that. From a messaging standpoint, in terms of the support, is there value? Is there value for the Business Advisory Committee to revisit some community messaging? I'll just ask it that way.
Yeah, well, this is David Davies at the project office, one of James's colleagues on the outreach team, and that's to echo that question. Like, that's certainly something we are thinking a lot about right now, which is how do we are now reacting, right, to the community's reactions, but we are also aiming to be proactive in engaging folks who we engaged over a number of years, right, in the business community. Sometimes that footprint has shrunk a little bit to the people that we talk to for the specific construction issue that we're dealing with that day. But how do we engage with those folks in the business community that are a little either farther away, maybe adjacent to the corridor, who have the interest in the project, who we haven't maybe prioritized over the last couple of years as we've been at our like kind of blinders on with day-to-day construction, right? What can we do with that messaging? How can we support you as the committee members in bringing that messaging forward in a proactive way? And I'll be honest, part of it's like who can speak up, right? Who can help speak up in talking about the project moving forward, right? Especially folks who haven't yet, you know, had some time in the spotlight yet, right? Like some businesses that we are would love to engage with. How do we connect with those folks?
Well, the only thing I can suggest, and it's certainly a complicated situation, is, you know, I think we get to own the breakdowns. I think the more authentic we can be, and taking responsibility and sharing as best we can with good information, that's how you build trust. You know, from a breakdown, you can have a breakthrough, but I think if we don't really share what's going on or what the realistic aspects are, and continue to sort of own the breakdowns and have strategies for how we get there, it erodes trust rather than builds trust. And I think, Jim, I really appreciated your presentation today. It seemed real. It seemed, you know, owning, you know, and all the stuff. But I just think for a lot of the people reading this in the paper or seeing something on the news, you know, in the absence of information, most people assume the worst. And so I would probably figure out how you over communicate. And there are going to be some issues that are going to come out of this with, you know, the condo building and so forth. Is the more you can share, I think the more we can get the public back engaged in this. And there's going to be some kickback for sure. You know, the budget's going to probably, by the end of the day, and no disrespect, it's probably going to double from the original budget. You know, there's going to be more surprises. There just always are. That's just how it goes. And even perhaps more delays. I hope not. It's a possibility till you get through this sticky piece. So that would be my suggestion, is just, I think the more transparent, the more honest. It is a complicated project, and I don't think anyone's surprised at that. And these are just things that evolve and come through construction, and this is construction at its most complicated means and methods.
No, Stu, I appreciate those comments. And, you know, one of the things with the SECA, we've been very careful because people live there, people own condos there. We've been trying to be very deliberate in not talking about it too much out there because we don't want to be impacting them. There's been information from the SECA folks getting out to the press. We try to kind of, you know, we've been trying to keep that under wraps as much as possible, just out of respect for the homeowners. So it's kind of it's difficult for us because we by nature, hopefully you guys appreciate it. We like to communicate. We want to get out there and talk about it, but in some cases, the sensitivity kind of limits that because we don't want to be talking about somebody's home that's having some issues. It just gets to be it's a problematic because, you know, we get questions from the Star Tribune. Give me details. What's going on? Well, we're not going to share the information we're sharing with the residents. And we actually had a meeting with the residents, residential community shortly after the incident. And it was a brutal meeting, but we, you know, out of respect for them, we're sharing with the residents, but not abroad. And that's where we get kind of caught with this. We're not being disclosing what's going on. And it also gets down to the technical issues. You know, you'll see in this tunnel video when you get a chance. There's a lot of stuff going on here. To communicate all these technical aspects gets to be a challenge. That's where we're trying to figure out what are the ways we can use, and hopefully this video is one of those mechanisms we can use to kind of communicate what is happening. Again, trying, because I've heard so many times, well, quit giving me excuses. Well, I still need to tell you what's going on. and where we're going. And I think it's important that, and you're right, this project, we're not done, and we got a long ways to go. We could have more hurdles coming up at us, as it's really a function of how we deal with those going forward, and trying to gear up for the next thing. That's my job. I'm trying to forecast what's going to hit me in the forehead next, and how am I going to respond to it. So it's just that navigation. It's just being so public, but yet they're so technical, and there's some sensitivity issues. That's what we're trying to navigate.
One of the comments I've seen in the public quite a bit lately is, putting the brakes on the project, right? So I think, could you talk a little bit about the progress to date, and/or talking points as to the reality that putting the brakes on this project just doesn't make any sense. I know if you haven't had a chance to look, Mayor Jim Hovland from Edina wrote an interesting op-ed a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, talking about there's no turning back on Southwest Light Rail.
Sure. Well, if you could just, let's just say we stop. And so from a contractual perspective, we have to deal with the contractors. We got 2 prime contractors working on this. We have to deal with this. That likely goes to litigation. Kind of an example of that, if you where the Maryland project, the Purple Line, where the contractor ended up walking off, well, there was a lawsuit, $250 million was paid to the contractor, and they left, and they've had to reprocure. We have 2 contractors who would certainly do that. There'd be just in our contract, they're going to be allowed after a number of days to seek other remedial action. But then you also have the infrastructure that's been built so far, and what do you do with that? So Excelsior Bridge is a good example. You just let it sit there until we can revive and move ahead. But there's other areas that in the BNSF corridor, for example, that we have agreements with BNSF. If there gets to be a period of time where we're not restarting, we have to rebuild everything to where it was before. Now, that's probably not a possibility, but certainly we'd have to get the Glenwood Avenue Bridge back up and running. They would probably tell us to take down the LRT infrastructure on their property that we built. Southwest Station, we have an agreement to essentially put them back to whole. So there's a building that's probably not going to happen, but there's probably some compensation that would have to be taken care of. So it's really thinking through things like that, and you're really going backwards. It's just you're really going backwards. And the cost will go higher just because of that contractual perspective, and also the kind of the restoration piece as well. What do you do with the tunnel, for example? So a lot of pieces that would need to be considered. It just really gets to be a mess.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Sorry to put you on the spot, but Kurt, Gary, I know you've been part of the process for a long time. Any questions on your mind?
I can chime in. I've been very impressed, Jim, with the navigation of all the hurdles, the construction that's been done. Very difficult project and a lot of issues. Happened during coronavirus, and while inflation is clipping along at 7%, and correct me if I've got my numbers wrong here, but I'm hearing a little more than 10% increase in the budget. Big damn deal, right? Am I wrong on the numbers?
Yeah, but it's still our challenge is still a lot of money. So thank you for that, Kurt. I would just say that I'm working in the project office here, and not to hit my colleagues or not, but we as Met Council and other agencies are not coming back to work yet, and hopefully will. To navigate a project of this magnitude has just been extremely challenging, because we typically would get in a room, strategize about the next issue. How do we solve it? Now, that's not to say, our field folks are still out there. They're working. They're at the field office. They're working with the contractor out in the field in the office. But it's been a significant challenge from just that strategic perspective of solving problems, doing it in venues like this. It's just it doesn't work as well. We've made amends. We've been able to make that work. But I think the challenge with our project, we have characteristically underestimated this project, going back to the county starting it. Then, and keep in mind, this is our consultants. I'm just pointing it out as it is. Our consultants put the estimates together. We've had a number of consultants as we've gone through taking over from the county, which was underestimated at that time. Then we had to take on Freight Rail. Our consultants underestimated it during preliminary engineering. And that's where the budget keeps on going up. We've been so focused on trying to work toward a number, and that number isn't necessarily the answer. So as recently as 2018, we were kind of really forced to get to a $2 billion project, where we were forecasting it was going to be more than that, but it had to get down to that $2 billion amount. And so, okay, we'll cut our contingency to get down to that, to satisfy what needs to be done, because this is a very political project. And I think a lot of other projects do that as well. I just see that we just have not done a good job on estimating throughout the life of this project, and even including as we're sitting with change orders. I have a consultant putting an independent cost estimate together. The contractor has a cost. It's really hard to capture this COVID piece and the supply and demand and what the contractor is really experiencing. And so it's really, I found it's just been a huge challenge for the engineering sector to kind of be in the same level as the contractor as far as what they're seeing, what these projects cost. There are a lot of projects going on out in the America, the universe right now, where we have limited people being able to work on, because there's so much going on, and it's just it's diluted, and so we underestimate, and that's been plaguing this project from day one. And how we get around that, we're trying to make some efforts to really get to more. I'm not saying the contractor's number is right all the time, because it's usually we're here and they're here, and we need that number is actually somewhere in the middle. And how do you really hone in on that? That's the real challenge. But yeah, it's just the time and the costs have been very painful for me personally, and I know it's been painful for a lot of folks out there. It's just, how do we get our arms around that? And hopefully when we have the next hurdle, we're able to keep that contained, because we probably will have other hurdles going down through the road. We've only just begun on the tunnel, for example. There's a lot of work left to do. So anyway.
Thanks for that, Kurt. I'm not sensing a lot of additional questions. I have two. One for the Southwest Light Rail team, Jim James, David, others. What can we be doing? Anything we can help with?
Well, I can take one part of that, which is kind of getting back to my points earlier. We are definitely looking to engage a little bit beyond that construction footprint this year. You'll see, we started that with the general public last year with our tours. And that was a really great opportunity to engage the general public with some of the, just getting people aware of what's going on, and people who don't necessarily live right next to the project, right? Who don't see it day to day. We got a lot of great feedback. I would like to see that extended to the business community. And we have a lot of big, well-known businesses in and around the corridor, and those we tout, and really as benefits. And I would also like to try to connect with what we've kind of referred to as like the mom and pops, right? Like folks who are really getting hit hard too by other things, right? Like coronavirus, and really scraping by right now, dealing with a lot of challenges as it is. And then they see this project coming, right? What does that mean to them? How can they, like, what will they get out of this project, right? Knowing it's delayed, but still seeing that it's on the horizon. Those are the folks that I'm hoping, and with James and Nikongo especially, you know, they're the coordinators on this kind of west side that's seeing this advanced degree of completion. So people really get to see that, right? Even though at the same time it's a double-edged sword. I think folks have brought out, like, you're going to see this and we're not going to get to use it for a little bit, but we can still kind of aim for that in the future. And so helping us connect with those folks would really be, and I know that that's not just this group here. We're also talking to that with the municipalities too. But folks that can help us connect beyond our construction footprint and be proactive would be extremely helpful this year.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Well, if anyone has ideas, I've got a couple that I'll kind of chew on and like to bounce off with Dan and James. The other, let me know, or feel free to chime in now. The other quick question that I didn't catch this earlier, but Tony mentioned in the chat box early on was, can we quickly reground ourselves and our purpose as a committee? And I'm just gonna fire from the hip here a little bit. You know, I think a big part of our purpose, and please chime in with your suggestions or questions or ways that we need to evolve, was to help be a resource to frame the opportunities along the corridor, both with the broader business community interests as well as specific opportunities during the alignment process. The other aspect from my standpoint that's critical is, again, communication to our collective communities and individual interests as well. I know there's a couple other areas, but any other commentary in terms of how we reground ourselves, if I'm saying that right, our purpose, if you will? How do we need to recenter our purpose and or areas of focus going forward?
And maybe, well, a question too could be, you know, if this group wants to kind of get back together on a slightly more regular basis, just to talk about kind of what's going on and how we can best communicate that to the business community. Less us maybe reporting out, but just kind of giving a general update and really leaning on all of you for some guidance on how these aspects will relate to your world.
Yeah.
From my input, I would just
is a cadence. So yeah. Thanks for that, Sophia.
For me, I would just add that, see, part of the benefit that I see is, you know, comments like Stuart's comments, right? I think hearing what you're hearing and really getting an honest appraisal of, you know, what people in the broader circles that you guys function in are saying, some of the questions that they have, maybe some of the input that you might get from those circles. I don't know if we have those, if we have another way really many times to get that kind of direct input. And I think, you know, you guys have pretty broad influence and broad circles. And I think to me, that's one of the benefits, is just hearing back specifically, you know, real honest appraisals and questions of what, you know, you're hearing. I think to me, that's sort of the one way, right? Influence. And then of course, the other way is, you know, what, how you guys have reacted in the past to help communicate out some of these messages as well and respond back. And once we've had these kinds of discussions together,
great.
I think it's very valuable.
Well, I guess my last question for the broader group is cadence. Again, we've been kind of in a quarterly function. If we can. Do we want to stay quarterly? Do we want to move it to every other month? Is there a value of going to a monthly cadence?
Well, my take would be, given where this is, the stage of what this is at, I personally think that quarterly is probably enough, but that's just my instinct.
Thanks, Dave.
Will, as I'm thinking, I think we kind of did this last year too, a little bit of if there's kind of the formal meetings that we can continue to have at whatever basis on whatever basis the committee feels, appropriate. And as we get into the height of the construction season, I know schedules are always hard, and that's kind of one of the nice things about the virtual landscape is it's easy to pop on from an office and pop off and even pop back on sometimes. Trying to have some of those face-to-face interactions out on site once or twice this year, might really continue to do some good. Even and also even expanding this circle, right? So like bringing a friend, bringing a business acquaintance, something of that sort that could, we don't want to expand the circle necessarily from the committee perspective, but certainly just driving those connections as appropriate. I think we can, the team's available to facilitate those types of less formal interactions in addition to the actual committee meetings.
Perfect. I think that makes sense. And I think, Dan, unless you disagree, maybe we'll continue to move forward on a quarterly basis. And in 3 months, hopefully we'll have some great weather, and maybe we can do another site visit. That could be potentially our next meeting as well. So.
I agree, Will. I think quarterly seems to be enough time, unless there's something that comes up during the process of the construction that you would want feedback from the business community, from us on this committee. Then I think Jim and James and Dave just reach out to us and let us know about that. But I think quarterly seems to be enough. I think in part of these meetings, you're looking for feedback from us, and I think I just want to go back to just touch real quickly just on something that Dwayne brought up on the possible graffiti or damage that could be done to these stations. That as the stations get complete, and then they just might be sitting there for a while. And you discussed about whether or not to put the glass in. I would encourage you to revisit that if possible. I know I get the whole scheduling with the subcontractors and trying to get everybody moved in line and getting their work done at the appropriate times. But maybe if there was a way to hold off putting the glass in those stations, at least until the last year or two before everything is done, it might be worth it. Because if we start to see damage to these stations, a couple of years before the line is up and operating, it's going to create a bunch of more negative input from the community as a whole. So it's just something to kind of ponder as you're looking for feedback from us. So.
Thanks for that, Dan. It's something that's on our minds, certainly.
I'd like to throw out one quick comment on the media coverage in the Star Tribune. It seems that the Kenilworth folks still have a very loud voice. Anytime anything happens, Star Tribune's all over it. And my opinion is that there's a fairly negative bent on all that communication. And I'm wondering if there is communication that needs to come from the project office or something that you want to get out there. Could it be published in the Star Tribune under our name? Positive pieces, a summary of the project, where we are to date, 60% completion, the obstacles that we're having, what we're doing to overcome those things, the $2 billion worth of, stuff that's happened at the stations, that kind of stuff. We could easily, draft a letter, tout those kind of things to sort of counter the singularly negative stuff that's coming out from whoever's got the ear of the Star Tribune from the Kenilworth corridor. I don't know who it is, but they've clearly had the ear of the Star Tribune all along here.
That was my question earlier, Kurt, right? And if you're interested in, happy to collaborate or do something if we think appropriate.
Yeah, I'm just saying if the project office needs a voice and they don't want it to just be the project office voice, you could certainly funnel it under our name.
Well, I think we would always encourage, outside perspectives. We are we are continuously bombarded by the Kenilworth corridor, and there's a lot of tentacles. It goes political, with the legislative audit, for example. We're going to have to undergo a explanation about what we did with the freight rail here with the legislative audit. And we're going to have to go through why I got hired, how I got hired, how my management staff got hired. That's all going to be coming up because this legislative audit is going to become a statute here soon. I think the House already voted 129-1, and we're fine with that. There's this project's so big, it needs to be there needs to be an audit because it's just part of the the process giving such a big project here, and we're not afraid of that. But it's all tied to the Kenilworth corridor and the freight rail question. It's just we're paying the price for the freight rail staying in the Kenilworth corridor, and there's that opposition will never go away, and just as how we navigate that. So any outside contribution from a perspective wise is always encouraged. If you all are willing to do something, we would encourage that, and our communications folks can work with you on that if that's something you want to proceed with.
Okay, fair enough. Any other questions or comments from the group here? Why don't we just plan that we'll probably reconvene in probably about 3 months in the next quarter here. We'll look at where we are with the construction, and the weather might be nicer. Maybe the next meeting will end up being a tour. We'll see where we are with that. What's everybody's sense of whether we do a tour or do another web meeting or an in-person meeting? What would be your preference for the next meeting?
I think a tour would be great.
I agree.
Did you want to have a hybrid? And the last time we were going to meet at City West, Dave, in your offices there, we were going to have a short presentation and then walk out to the site. We want to do something like that, or just have a straight tour, meet, set up a van, and, pick out some sites.
Yeah, I think we're with the downtrend of the COVID situation. I think we can host a meeting at our Optum campus if that's helpful. And so if that's the best method, and then do a quick walk from there, I'll support that, but I'll leave it up to your guidance.
That would be great, Dave, if we could do that. And if people are open to the doing the tour, and if we're looking out at the next quarter, maybe 3 months from now, we're looking at probably about that second week of June. If that works, hopefully the weather will be much nicer by then, and it'd be a good time to take a tour. So why don't we just kind of try to keep that on the radar? Maybe we'll try to set it up for a Wednesday again, if Wednesday seems to be the best day of the week that works for everybody. And just kind of look for messages that will come out probably in a couple months, starting to try to nail that date down. So, all right. So if no other comments or anything, I appreciate everybody joining the meeting. Thanks for the presentation. Great update. A lot of good information. Thanks for keeping us informed on everything. And I think with that, I guess we'll go ahead and adjourn. So.
Hey, Dan, just real quick, just let the members know that, again, I apologize for the technical difficulties with the video, but I did send out a link. Check your email boxes for that if you want to view that.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Everybody, take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.